Good morning, and thank you for braving what might be a bad weather day to join us. I wanted to take a moment, and on behalf of Mary Brislin and Citrin Cooperman, to welcome you all here today. It is really our pleasure to host this event each year and have all of you join us. As a woman and a mother of two daughters in their 20s, the advancement of women is really a passion for me. And as I prepare for this event each year, I take a moment and I do some research, and I look at what the statistics show, what the environment is showing in relation to women in business. And I wanted to just share a couple of brief statistics with you today. According to the Forum of Executive Women, Women on Boards 2017 report, the forces pushing for progress are making a change. They're making a difference. For the period 2011 to 2016, percentage of board seats held by women increased from 11 to 16%. And the percentage of female executives rose from 11 to 15%. Now, if you're like me, you may say, that's a small change, and we have a long way to go. But I'm an accountant, and so it's also important to look at the numbers a little differently. Female board seats increased from 94 to 136. That's almost a 45% increase. So it shows we're making progress. Female executives increased from 67 to 91, a 36% increase. Again, we're making progress. Companies with no female directors declined from 36 to 19, and companies with no women executives went from 58 to 43. So what this says is I think people are recognizing the value of diversity in leadership roles and on their boards. And that, to me, is something to be hopeful for. So while we have a long way to go, we're moving in the right direction. Forums such as today really help with that progress. They allow us to bring together women like our panelists and like all of you in the room, and men as well, who want to push for that change, who want to see a difference and value that diversity. So I'm pleased to welcome the women we're honoring this year. They are highly successful women who can share with us their stories to help us all take away something that we can use in our lives to continue that forward progress. I'm going to turn it over to Mary, who's going to introduce our women and present their awards. Thank you all so much for attending, and I look forward to today's presentation.
Good morning. My name is Mary Brislin, and I'm a partner with Citrin Cooperman, and we welcome our three panelists today, as well as all of you who are, thankfully, the weather held off and were able to attend today. One of our first panelists that we would like to give our award, Driving Your Business, is Leslie Benoliel. She's the CEO and president of Entrepreneur Works, which is a nonprofit organization that provides comprehensive business training, advisory services, and microloans to entrepreneurs of low, minority, and other underserved communities throughout the greater Philadelphia. Leslie currently serves on the advisory board of the Philadelphia Office, Community Empowerment and Opportunity, and we would like to present to Leslie the Driving Your Business Award. Our next panelist is Jen Groover, who's a serial entrepreneur, author and thought leader in human potential, as well as a retired national-level fitness competitor. Jen will be releasing 3 books later this year. We would also like to congratulate Jen on the Driving Your Business Award from Citrin Cooperman. Our third panelist is Heather Mitz. She's a 3-time Olympic gold medalist and co-founder of Ceres Platinum, which assists female athletes and businesswomen as they transition into a new career. Heather, congratulations. Before we start our questions, we would like to ask Jen to start with telling a little bit about ourselves to the group.
Good morning, everyone. How's everyone doing? So I am a serial entrepreneur. I started my first business right out of college in 1995, before entrepreneurship was really cool and people thought I was just not employable. I had this really clear notion that I didn't want to ever put myself in a position where someone else could limit my progress by their limited beliefs, which is why I ventured into entrepreneurship. My first industry was in the fitness industry. I owned a gym in Wilmington, Delaware, and I was a national level fitness competitor and worked for Reebok on the aerobics performance team. From there, I went into many different areas of business, anywhere from fitness to fashion, sports entertainment, sports management, to technology, and a lot of potpourri in between. I am an international speaker, an author, a UN delegate, and a mother of 13-year-old twin girls.
Hi, everybody. Happy to be here. I had the luxury of playing soccer for 30 years. And when I graduated college, I was going to go back and get my master's in sports broadcasting, but it would just so happen that I had the opportunity to continue playing. I thought that I would do that for a couple years. Ended up being a little longer than I expected, but through my unfortunate injuries, I had many along the way. I had an opportunity to get a lot of TV experience, and I thought that when I was done playing, that would be the easy transition for me. Having gotten that experience, people were really excited about me finally retiring and being able to completely focus on the television part of it. And it just so happened that I would be fortunate enough to become pregnant and found out that television wasn't exactly the area that I wanted to go into as far as a mother and being home. So I find myself at this place that was kind of a lonely place. I lost my teammates, I lost my coaches, and it was now a question of what now? And I teamed up with one of my former teammates that played in the 2008 Olympics with me. She had retired before me, brilliant woman, president of the Women's Sports Foundation, and she was struggling as well. So we decided to come together and form this company, Ceres Platinum, to try to help women, female athletes in particular, transition after they're done playing. We're their team, we're their support group, and it's kind of transpired into us helping business women and career women as well.
Wow. I'm awed by these two ladies beside me, and they represent the best women can offer. So I'm Leslie Benoliel. My career started decades before yours. But my career is still very much in finance. It's just taken a different form than I originally intended when I graduated from college, a few decades ago. I started my career in commercial banking in New York City during the Gaga years in the 80s, but quickly burnt out because I just felt that what I was doing wasn't very meaningful, other than, I was having a lot of fun and earning a nice salary and enjoying the good life in New York City. So I took a step back. I gave myself a self-imposed sabbatical when I turned 30. And traveled around the world with a backpack by myself for 14 months, mostly in Asia. And it was a transformative period in my life. I must say that it wasn't difficult traveling. I think the greatest challenge for me was making the decision to leave a promising career in banking in New York City for something that was very unknown. But looking back, it was one of the best decisions I made. Fast forward a few decades, I came back to Philadelphia, went to graduate school, got my degree in finance, an MBA from Wharton, and then tried to go back into some level of finance in the private sector, but all those feelings of where is this leading to is just not meaningful to me. And that led me to connecting with a senior executive, recently retired bank executive who was very close with my father. And he was on the board of an organization then called Philadelphia Development Partnership that was working in communities here in Philadelphia to help build their capacity, organizations and individuals, to build housing and to create jobs in a lot of our disinvested neighborhoods. He said, why don't you join them, meet the executive director? And that was back in 1992. So here it is in 2018, 26 years later, and I can't believe it. I'm running an organization that works with entrepreneurs. Over 60% of them are women. We work with 300 to 400 entrepreneurs and small business owners every year here in the greater Philadelphia region to help them start up, launch, and grow their business. And we do that by providing them with training, workshops, coaching, and we run a loan fund, microloans up to $50,000. I love this work. I love the people I work with. My team is phenomenal. And it's what inspires me day in and day out. And I can't believe that I've been in this industry almost 3 decades, but it barely seems like a day has gone by. So thank you for having me.
Jen, here I am. Where'd she go? We like to walk around the room when we ask the questions. And this way, if anyone in the audience would like to ask a question, we will allow that towards the end of the panelists. First question for you, Jen, is how do you develop a new venture and what drives you?
So my system, my process to develop a new venture usually just starts with an aha moment, a moment of clarity, as I call it. And once I get that moment of clarity, I start to research what that idea is and what the marketplace looks like around that idea. And then I start to think of who I can align myself with to bring that idea to life. I am an entrepreneur that's all about partnerships. I believe that I'm really good at what I'm good at, and I'm not good at what I'm not good at, and it would behoove me to partner and align myself with people that are good at what I'm not good at. And I've approached my entire career that way. It saves a lot of time and pain and effort and accelerates your opportunity to success. You have to have an abundant, trusting mindset in order to do that versus a fear-based mindset. But once I start to identify the people I can align myself with, I start to move forward in just doing it. I have this belief that I have more fear of regret than I have of failure. Most people stop their ideas before they even get started because they talk themselves out of every reason why it won't work. And I talk myself into every reason why it would work. And so I don't any longer at this form of entrepreneurship have that fear where I just stop, I just go. And I figure it out as I go. I think if we overanalyze and almost over-prepare, I'm not saying don't do your research or have a strategy, but if you wait for it to be a perfect moment, the moment will pass 10, 20, 30 years later. So once I align myself with people, I always focus on how am I going to get it to market through the media first and foremost. And that's a strength for me, understanding how to align myself with the media, how to pitch the media, and then also how to market the idea. Most people get caught up in the widget side of the business and don't think about how they're getting the message heard. And that's also another huge roadblock for most companies getting to market successfully, where if you're going to start a business, the greatest thing to train yourself in is branding, marketing, and PR. Thank you.
Jen, I just wanted to follow up just briefly on that. You talked about knowing what you're good at and what you're not good at. How did you develop that over time? Was it something you knew right away, or did it sort of evolve over time?
That's such a great question. I think that the clarity of that comes with confidence as you grow and you become more mature, to be okay to be vulnerable, to say, I'm not good at something. And that was probably the most challenging thing for me. And I think most entrepreneurs in the beginning is that they're afraid to say what they're not good at for looking weak, or that they're not smart enough to be doing what they're doing. And so usually it begins by the things that I procrastinate the most are the things I don't like or I'm not good at. And when you procrastinate something and you know that you're going to do it, we all know that we're going to do it, it's probably the first gap you want to fill, because you're going to waste time and energy and stay in a stalled position if you don't. So the way I evaluate it today is, like I said, really recognizing what I don't like to do and what I'm going to procrastinate or what I just don't know. And if I don't know it, I do like to educate myself on it before I align with somebody on it. It's like when I first started my handbag company, I invested heavily in learning everything I could about PR. I was still going to hire a publicist to do it, but the more I understood about the art form of PR, the better I was going to be support system to that publicist to do it. So I always educate myself on those things before I align with somebody, so I know the right questions to ask somebody. I know when someone's saying that they're good at something, how to evaluate it. And if it's something, again, that you're going to procrastinate, I always say that's the first thing you outsource.
Thank you. Heather, can you discuss your experience with your career in transition and what inspired you to start your own business?
Yeah, I mean, I think just everybody focuses on the male athletes and how difficult it is for them. Well, guess what? It's tough for the women also. And having had so much success on the playing field, I know I had the tools to be able to use those in the business world. But then I think it's about figuring out what you're passionate about, what it is that you want to have be your next career. So being in that spot where I didn't really know what was next, I didn't have a team around, I didn't have that support system, it scared the crap out of me. And being able to align with one of my teammates, I think that really helped as well because we were going through a similar circumstance. And we're like, well, if we've had so much success on the playing field and we know we can do the same thing in the business venture, being in this place, we don't want anybody else to have to be in this scary place. So we decided to create Ceres Platinum because there was nothing else out there. And we knew we had to do it now. I don't think the timing was maybe the best. I have 2 children. I'm expecting my 3rd in August, and my partner has an 8-month-old baby. So it's tough to be able to juggle the motherhood on top of starting a brand new business, but we're able to do it. I think we have a great support group. We have 2 other gentlemen that we can depend on, that we know can carry the weight, and we believe in our idea. And I think that if you're passionate about your idea, you have a good support group, and you're willing to put in the work and really grit and grind it out, then you're going to have success no matter what.
Thank you. Leslie, we are often in reading, going off of something Heather said with the life struggles, we're often pulled in many directions and with our career and overall lives. What advice do you have for individuals regarding prioritization and time management from a professional standpoint?
Yeah, everyone talks about the balance, and I was searching for a different type of word because, you're always juggling, and life is like that. And it's people who have kids and people who don't have children. We all have our families, and we all have our desires, our priorities. So it's really taking stock and checking in with yourself and stepping away and saying, what are my priorities? And one thing, I've heard a lot of advice to me, and I'm giving it to others as well, is take care of yourself first, because you need to be healthy and strong if you want to take care of others. And that's so important to remind, especially women, and especially women with either caring for families or partners or their parents. We're starting to see more and more people taking care of elderly parents, that they take care of themselves. The business is important. So you have to constantly step back and align yourself, but establish some really clear goals, priorities, and revisit them. And keep coming back to that. Don't stray too far from that.
Jen, how do you use your network in your career?
So I was taught by my mentor when I was 25 years old, a man named T. Harv Eker. Your network is your net worth, financially, spiritually, mentally, emotionally, physically. And When I was in first grade, I was tied to my chair by Sister Elizabeth from walking around the classroom in the middle of class. So my networking skills were already pretty good at a young age. So when he said that to me, I was like, wait, I'm really good at that. That's something I've been really good at my whole life. And I've always put that as a top priority, taking that extra few minutes just to check in on somebody, and really developing true relationships, not just, hey, what can you do for me, but what can I do for you? And developing those relationships over time and being a giver instead of a taker. And I think that's really important when you're approaching a relationship by how can I help you? I love just doing random check-ins with some of my friends saying, hey, I'm doing a thing today where I'm just going to introduce some of my friends to 3 people I know that will help accelerate their career today. Or then I'll do a random text message to people, 3 people in a day, and I'll tell them what I'm grateful for about them. And those kind of things go so far. And I think the key is being grounded in an abundant mindset. I believe the more successful my friends are, the more successful I am. And so if I can help accelerate everybody's success around me, then I can only rise with them, right? And so a lot of people don't ever leverage their networks to the fullest capacity because they don't, number one, approach it like a relationship, an ongoing relationship. Number 2, they don't take that extra moment to go out of their way to say, what can I do to help you? And they don't have an abundant mindset where they're afraid if they give too many relationships away that they're going to be left behind. I see this, unfortunately, a lot more with women than I do men, and I always try and educate people who I speak to or mentor that if I'm introducing somebody, two people together, and they go off and become best friends and business partners, I've just done an amazing thing. By introducing 2 people, I'm potentially introducing massive capital together, right? Introducing 2 people together creates assets. And to try and micromanage that, or try to be like, hey, I saw you guys were at an event, and you didn't invite me, and feel all upset about it, are the kind of behaviors that just hold us back from moving forward.
I'm going to play off a little bit of what you just said there because you mentioned the word mentor a couple of times. So I'd like to start with you, but then put this to the panel as a whole. How have mentors helped you in your life, and how does that evolve over the course of your career?
Mentors have helped me immensely. I couldn't be anywhere close to where I am today without various mentors throughout my entire life. And there's business mentors, there's personal development mentors, there's my friendships are all mentorships, really, is the way I look at my friendships, because I'm choosing to align myself with people who are constantly in growth mode, who are trying to, in some way or shape of their lives, always lift and support other people. So every stage I get in life, I look at stages of a life like hot air balloons. And so when you're in a hot air balloon, the only way to get to the next level is to get rid of some stuff, and then you go a little bit higher. And as I go through different stages of life, I'm going through growth, some letting go of things that maybe belief systems, patterns, behaviors that are not allowing me to get to the next level. But in order to get to that next level, I'm also going to need people to help me. One of the biggest things I will say in this topic is, again, this is really focused towards women because it's where another thing that I see that holds women back, pay for mentorship. Do not expect people to mentor you just for free. There might be people who do it, but the people that you pay to mentor you that are ahead of where you are, that already have what you want, will take you and your career and your path so much more seriously than if you expect it just for free. And so, again, there might be people that come along in your career path that want to help you and keep nurturing you, but when you pay for it, it is an energetic investment in yourself that the other person takes so much more seriously. And so when I have people that I mentor and I watch them invest in themselves, I never stop mentoring them. past the time that we're mentoring, that we have a scheduled mentorship, because I know that they are constantly investing in themselves to keep going forward. And there's a huge performance recognition in that by people that are ahead of where you are, because I couldn't be where I am today without mentors that I've invested in throughout my career.
Yeah, and I couldn't agree more. My first naturally was through soccer. And it was later in my career, though. It was before my first Olympics. I had gone from playing just 3 games for the national team. And it just so happened that the player that had an injury played my position. She was a veteran. She knew that she would be back from her injury, that she had nothing to worry about with me. So she was very kind about just teaching me the positioning and everything that it took in order to step in and be a starter. And I was so gracious for that feedback and that trust and her companionship. And so from then on out, I wanted to be that player that if I was a veteran, that I was able to then give back to the players behind me and in the future. And since playing, Jen's actually probably my biggest mentor that is here in Philly. And it just so happened that we were doing a Thusio event together, and I just gravitated towards her. I was working with her 2 daughters, and I gravitated towards her because I loved the way that she was raising her kids. So we had an opportunity to get together and just meet, and I was asking her questions about schools. And then she kind of started telling me about herself. I had no idea what a badass she was, but I just have kind of latched onto her now, and there's no way she's going to be able to get rid of me. But I think it's about aligning yourself with strong females that are smarter than you, that are more successful, that are badasses, as I had said, and just trying to learn from them and emulate and try to be like them. We all need mentors, and I've been very lucky to learn from Jen. I'm learning a lot once again today.
Thank you, honey.
So I'm going to approach this a little bit differently. We're in the business of helping entrepreneurs and coaching and mentoring them in some form or fashion. There's different levels of, well, you hear it. It's coaching, it's advising, what distinguishes. I don't want to get into the definitional pieces, but we do work with entrepreneurs, and we tell them you need to assemble like a kitchen cabinet of advisors. And what you want to look for positive people. You want to look for people that come with abundance, that come with a very positive mindset. And you want to look for individuals who bring different skills and viewpoints to what you're trying to do. Because I find that some of the best advice that has come to me has come from people who have challenged my assumptions. But challenge it from a standpoint of, this is to help you grow. This is to help you to think about. Because we can get very stuck. And as an entrepreneur, especially starting out, many people get so involved with the widget or the baking or the service and not think about sort of more the strategic. And having mentors and coaches and an advisory group helps take you away from that so you can look at it more strategically. But you have to be intentional about that. That it's a relationship, and you have to build those and nurture those relationships over time. And those are going to change as you evolve. But some of the same family members and other friends have been my mentors or my touchstones throughout my life. And it's developing that level of trust. It's a two-way street. As much as you, I'll put it this way. When you're asking advice, you're actually giving somebody a gift, because it makes them feel honored and good, and they want to do it. They'll tell you if they don't want to do it, but those that do, you're really giving them a gift. And look at it that way, and also understand that it's a two-way street, that you're opening yourself up and making yourself vulnerable, and they'll feel comfortable coming to you as well. So it's nurturing those relationships, it's evolving them over time, but it's giving of yourself and making yourself vulnerable.
Heather, we often talk about risk and reward as being tied together. Can you talk a little bit about when you've had to make a decision and face some risk in the choices you've made?
When I was playing here in Philly, our league folded, and so I assumed that my playing career was over. I was offered a fantastic job opportunity at NBC 10, and I started training to be a sport anchor. And it just so happened that I wasn't really in the mix with the national team, but I got an invite to go to residency. And all it was 3 months out in California to try to make the Olympic team, which I knew was a long shot. But I also didn't want to sit there and always question what if. So I took my chances, and I went, and thankfully, the player Joy Fawcett ended up getting injured. I got some experience, and I was able to go on and play in 3 Olympics and 1 World Cup. And I look back on that. I love these questions because it makes you reflect, but just that decision to kind of put yourself out there, to take a risk, not knowing what was going to happen. Even if I didn't succeed, I think I still would have learned so much about myself as a person through that failure. I think that we all do. So I think it's just about taking risks because you never know what's going to happen.
Jen, could you weigh in on that a little bit about the risks you've taken in your career?
I feel like my whole life has been one big risk. It's where I get my adrenaline from. I don't believe you can have excellence in life without taking risks. I mean, there's nothing great that can be achieved without taking risk. And that's always been my belief. I think even since I was a child, I was the kid that was challenging everyone how far and high they could jump off the swing set or how fast they could ride their bike down the hill. Dangerous hill. I spent a lot of time in the emergency room based on my risk rewards. But I just, every cell of my soul believes that you cannot achieve greatness by playing it safe or being comfortable. And my mom had a mantra that I did not like as a child, but I embody it and I say it to my kids all the time, but you have to learn to be comfortable with being uncomfortable. Mm-hmm. So much to the point that I'm uncomfortable when I'm comfortable, and I get bored pretty quickly. So so I will just keep starting companies and doing things probably for the rest of my life because it's so fulfilling. Growth is so fulfilling. Happiness is derived from growth. Happiness is derived from moving forward. So when you're complacent, you are killing your passion and you're not fulfilling your happiness.
Leslie, when you counsel others, does the topic of risk come up, and how do you address that when you're counseling others?
Yes, although many of our entrepreneurs, they're kind of born with this, gotta try it, and they don't see it as necessarily risk. It's interesting. Most entrepreneurs, it's part of their DNA. So what others perceive as risk, they do not. So what we don't want to say is we don't want to squash that. We want to nurture that. But we want to do that in a way that gives them some parameters so that they don't. So the riskiest ventures are the ones that they have no idea. They don't know what they don't know. So we help them ask the questions to help them make better, sounder decisions so that they manage those risks and that they're prepared for the unexpected. But most don't come in and saying, I know this is a risky thing. Most of our clients come from very challenged environments, so they've got the grit and the determination, and they come with so much, being able to do so much with so little. And that's what's very inspiring about our work. So they don't have as much to risk because what's there to lose? Many have part-time jobs or they're in and out of jobs, and they're pursuing a passion. So they feel very comfortable about this. What we try and help them with is we don't want them to get into a deeper hole. And yes, we're in the business of lending them money, but we lend them small amounts of money, and our services come with a lot of coaching and hand-holding, and our doors are open, and we're there to be a sounding board, to just run those ideas by us. Here are some things you ought to consider, you ought to take a look at. So it's gentle guidance through the process, but it's interesting. They don't come thinking they're doing something very, very risky.
Great. We hear a lot about, we discussed using your network, et cetera, finding people. Some people like to just go towards women, and so from a gender bias, have you faced gender bias in operating any of your businesses?
So this is always an interesting question to me because I definitely feel my experience as an entrepreneur is different than my fellow females that might be in corporate America. I grew up as a tomboy, and obviously I just the swing and the bike thing. And so I was always able to relate to guys as well as I could relate to girls. And I think having that skill set has helped me tremendously in business and has helped me identify to the two different languages so that it didn't cause me biases. This might not be a popular statement, but it's the truth. Women have blockaded me in business more than men have, if I have to answer that question fairly. And just this morning, a woman who literally killed a deal, she didn't know that I knew that she killed this deal, reached out to me for help with something, not knowing that I know that she killed this deal, and I gladly helped her because I believe very much in karma. But I feel like moving forward and how I've approached my career to not have those issues that often is number one, be clear as to who you are and what your boundaries are and what's tolerable and what's not. And be very upfront and open about that and not afraid that you're going to lose something because of it. If I lived in fear of losing opportunities because of my boundaries, then I'm also giving away my soul to be successful, which I'm not okay with. I think also understanding that men and women have different languages and that we create a greater whole together as two genders. Every one of my business partners, by the way, are men. Every single business I have, my business partners are men because it's a yin and a yang thing. And I have found that if we can approach assessing what we're really good at and assessing what they're really good at together, we create a greater whole, which is why all my business partnerships have lasted so long and have done so well together. Because I assess what they're really good at and I praise it. And if we can keep doing that in every aspect of business, it's not one's better than the other because we're not. We're just different. And together we can just create a lot more value as a whole.
Ceres is a female-run business, and obviously we're catering to women. So I would say we've gotten some groups of men that say, this idea hasn't been used before. Like, no male has come up with this idea. No, it's the first of its kind. And we're pretty excited that we came up with it. So, and I even threw this question out to the other two gentlemen that work in our company. And I thought it was very interesting because they both have daughters. And they're so passionate about this idea. They feel like it should be out there also. And it seems that they actually run into more of the gender bias from females because they're unsure of, why are you pushing this company? It's catered towards women. But I think once they realize that they have daughters, then they understand the purpose. And so it has been very interesting. We have been obviously very much supported as well. Citrin Cooperman in particular has been so supportive of Ceres, and we've been very lucky, but obviously you're going to experience both sides of it. But it does just motivate you to work even harder.
Great.
So personally, early in my career, I think I felt gender bias. In the financial industry, it was really opening up to women professionals. So there was a lot of, I remember when I started a training class in a bank, half of our training class were women. But it became very clear that there were certain behaviors and structural elements that precluded advancement of women. And I think looking back on it now, I think some of that impacted my decision to get out when I did in my late 20s or early 30s. But the world I operate in now is very, very different. At this early entrepreneur startup level, more of our clients are women. 60% of our clientele are women. And so they don't encounter the same biases. There's different biases that they encounter along the way. But I do hear from some women, especially those that have established businesses that are seeking loans, that they are not getting the same, the perception is they're not getting the same reception from a bank as they would an alternative lender like ourselves. So that, I think, still exists, since many in the financial industry is still dominated by men, and there are certain behaviors. But some of that goes beyond the gender differences, too, especially in the financial industry. But in our world, it's very encouraging and inspiring to see so many women. And what's really I love to see is when they bring, not just the women, but the men too, bring their young kids. And they come in saying, I want to build something, and I want to build something that I can pass along to my children. They may decide not to run with it, but at least I want to have something there to pass on to my children. So,
Mary, can I add something real fast?
Sure.
Leslie just brought up a point that I think is really important that I'm in the trenches with. There are a lot of venture capitalists that want to give money to females. Like, they're dying to give money to females. They're looking for it. The issue that they're having is not that there aren't a lot of women-owned businesses. It's the level of confidence that the women are coming to the table with when they're pitching their ideas. And so I tell women all the time, if there's one area that you can work on to improve this cycle, is always in building your self-worth, your self-respect, therefore your self-confidence. So they're looking for the jockey who's coming in to like run that ship with a swagger and confidence. And you don't have to be loud and boisterous to have that confidence. It can be silent as well. But that's what they're looking for. And men will typically come in, and I sit in these pitches all the time, and they're like, this is the best business idea ever, and I'm going to IPO it in 5 years. Where women will come in and say, I just hope it makes $100,000 this year. And they're like, well, no, I don't want it to make $100,000 this year. This could be making $500,000. So if they're coming in with a greater sense of true value and a greater sense of conviction, those are the women that are going to get the money. They are, every time these group of venture capitalists will say, I just wanted them to be more confident. I just wanted to have more swagger. And I'm sitting there watching it, and I get it. I get what they're saying. And so one of the things women as leaders can help do in that whole mentorship cycle is help build that confidence and conviction so that when women are asking for funding, they understand that their idea is actually secondary to the conviction and confidence they're coming in with.
Great. Thank you. Leslie, you had mentioned something that some of your entrepreneurs come to you and they have other bias. They encounter other biases besides gender biases. Do you want to elaborate on any of that?
I think 80% or more than 80% of our clients are people of color, and they come from challenged income circumstances. They face incredible biases working with traditional institutions. And the trust, there's a lack of trust on both sides. And that prohibits a lot of people from moving forward, a lot of people that have a lot of good skills, good ideas, they have the grit, they have the tenacity, but there is a lack of trust, and that holds them back. We find that our successful entrepreneurs, they come to us, we're able to work with them over longer periods of time and help them navigate because we develop that level of trust. We're not in it for the money. We're not in it for the transaction. We're in it, our mission is to help you be successful and whatever path you choose on your entrepreneurship journey. But there are clearly biases, perceived and real, in the financial world. And to Jen's point, and we see this too, we're asked to participate in pitches or as judges. There's a lot of interest in the venture capital world to invest in women-owned business and invest in minority-owned businesses. But the reality is there has to be movement from both ends. I do agree that women don't necessarily can be aggressive pitchers, but I've also heard from that a women-owned, somebody that comes out too aggressive, they're like, well, I've heard her story before. I heard that. It was a woman who said that, a woman venture capitalist. I've heard that story before, so I don't think the business model is good. And I get that, but I think if we really are serious about investing in women-owned businesses and minority-owned businesses, that the communities that have the resources need to understand some of those more intangible issues such as trust to build those connections. I think that's critically important. It's part of, personally, what I feel I can do in the position, the role that I play, is because I understand, or feel like I understand both sides of that and bring those closer together. Because I think there's enormous opportunity, and I think we're compromised in tapping into those opportunities by some of these structural elements. And a lot of it is just grit and patience and helping nurture people along. We've got a lot of talent in this city, in this region.
Right. Okay.
So I'd like to switch topics a little bit. Obviously, being involved in the types of business you are, there are difficult decisions and difficult things that you face. Jen, can you talk a little bit about the most difficult parts of your business and how you deal with those?
The most difficult parts of my business are, honestly, is having enough hours in the day. Is that a good answer? It's the truth, really. It's because I structurally started from the ground up, doing something I'm only passionate about, aligning myself with people that are good at what I'm not good at, and focused on allocating the things and outsourcing the things that I'm going to procrastinate. I've already set up a foundation to eliminate a lot of those frustrations, right? So for me, it really is just having enough hours in the day to accomplish all the different things that I want to, and tuning out and creating structure to tune out the noise. So tuning out the noise means something as simple as turning your cell phone facing down and putting it on silent for 4 hours straight and not looking at it, as tempted as you are. Because every time you look at it, you ruin the train of thought and the flow that you're in. That's probably one of my biggest challenges, I kid you not. It's just not looking at my cell phone throughout the day. I think it's really about creating parameters and boundaries around removing distractions. One of the other biggest things I teach is what I call the drama-free zone. And I live in the drama-free zone, and I don't allow drama in my space. And I don't allow people that cause drama in my space, because that's probably one of the biggest distractions people face every single day that they don't even realize. And I also am very careful, as in a work day, to let my friends know if they're calling me just to catch up, I can't do it during a work day because it takes me out of flow. So creating those boundaries too. And it's really about identifying what distracts you and what doesn't. But the drama-free zone eliminates probably about an 80% mental bandwidth for most people.
Heather, your thoughts on difficult decisions?
On difficult decisions that I have made in the past. I think one thing that I learned from, and I actually got completely burned was aligning with a financial advisor that was one of my husband's teammates. And we didn't do our due diligence to do our own background. We have learned drastically from that experience because we had some financial woes. That gentleman actually was so close to us that he ended up in our wedding, and it was very difficult. We were able to recoup the funds, fortunately, but something that became extremely personal to me and something that I want to make sure that never happens to whether it's a female or male. It's just learning from my experience, learning from my woes. And so when we formed Ceres Platinum, we wanted to make sure that financial service was a part of it, so that our clients would never have to experience what I experienced. But at the same time, I wanted to be able to offer a finance 101, just being able to really learn about your finances. I think it's something that's missing a little bit from a female perspective. And I know especially just having gone through it, through the playing career, I know that many of the female athletes don't have a clue. And there's so much to it from a tax perspective, from a finance perspective, just learning about your money. You can't depend on other people. You can't depend on your parents. You can't depend on your spouse. You have to learn it yourself. So it's something that has become very important for myself and for my company.
Great, thank you. And Leslie, this may be a little bit different from your perspective, but can you talk about the difficult decisions you may have to make or that the clients you work with have to make on a day-to-day basis?
Yes. It has to do with human capital. I think the most challenging decisions and circumstances that I've faced, especially in recent years, is working with your staff and building a team and making that team all try and move in bringing different talents, but making them move in the same direction. It's been especially challenging this past year. We're 8 staff, and I lost 5 staff in 1 year, which was, to me, it never happened before, and all for very, very different reasons. I now have 5 new staff that are just phenomenal, and I really can't put my finger on it, but it does point to the challenges you face when you bring somebody in, especially when you're a small team, that they bring certain skills and relationships, but the rest of the team has to kind of evolve around that to help integrate that in to make an organization move forward. So it's a constant challenge because sometimes it isn't a good fit, and it's not about that person, and it's not about their talents, and it's not necessarily about us or me. I mean, Grant, I'm sitting there, is there something I did? Is there something I did? And you have to sort of reflect back going, no, come on, we've run this organization successfully for over 20 years. Maybe it just wasn't a good fit, and we do a good job screening people. And people come to our organization because they want to do good work. I mean, we don't hire if they're not committed to the mission of helping communities and entrepreneurial development. But we don't pay as much as the private sector, and it's been a very strong market. So I lost 1 employee after 9 months to the tech sector. I mean, he went from earning a salary in the high 30s to over 100,000. I can't compete with that, and that was something new to me, especially coming off the recession, where there's a lot of young, great talent that was willing to work for probably less than they could have in better years. But we're feeling the pressure now of a stronger economy. And that's been really tough to manage those transitions while keeping the rest of the team or new team members whole. And with entrepreneurs, yes, it's saying no. It's saying no in that you don't want to squash the dream. You don't want to put out the energy. But you want to say, I'm not quite sure if you're ready to take this class right now. Why don't you do some more research? And what we try and do is gently guide them. It's really about them. They have to put in the work. So it's guiding them in such a way that they go out and do more homework, and then they come back to you. And then maybe they're in a better position to take advantage of our class or be better prepared to take on a loan. But we've had to say no. We have one gentleman right now who's been very persistent, but but clearly he just doesn't have enough there. So we've had to give him a pretty firm no. And that's really tough because we're in the business of, it doesn't matter where you are, we try to come to you where you are at that point and maybe help you get to those next steps and then the next step and move forward. So saying no is a real tough thing for us.
Thank you. One of the things we've been talking about a little bit is change and change in the environment and how we react to that. Obviously, social media has played a big part in his changing business. Heather, I'd like to put out to you. Can you talk a little bit about how social media impacts your business? And then we'll move on to the rest of the panel.
Yeah, we announced our company on social media. I think it's everybody's on social media. As Jen mentioned, she has to put her phone down to stay away from it. I think we're all in the same boat, and we're constantly on our phones, just trying to see what is out there. I think it's a great way to brand yourself. The company that we work with, works primarily on just getting out there on social media and spreading the word about what we're doing, events that we're involved in, how we're trying to change the perspective of the female landscape. So just being very involved and continuing to share your message on social media. It's not going away anytime soon, so you really have to make sure you're taking advantage of it.
Yeah. Jen, do you want to touch on that as well?
You're asking a mother of 13-year-old twins about social media. So while there are those aspects of it, from a perspective of an entrepreneur, I remember being an entrepreneur when social media didn't exist. And you had to spend a lot more money on marketing and advertising and PR services. And social media has leveled the playing field to give people more power. And so I fully embrace the power of it. It's not going anywhere ever, probably. It will keep evolving. But we're in a content world, and we can engage with people all over the world all the time. And that's really exciting. And, it could just take me launching something and Heather tweeting it one time to create this domino effect of amazingness because her following is so loyal. And so it's really about being strategic in how you're using social media, creating quality content, truly engaging with people, responding when people take time to respond. I know it can be time consuming. Carve out a part of your day to do it. And just align yourself with other people who are as equally as engaged. I have a very solid group of friends that whenever we're launching something, we support each other. And everyone has big followings. And so we make it really simple. We literally put a 140-character statement for somebody so they could literally copy and paste it, and the image is already ready. So if you're asking people to align with you and share social media, just make it as easy as possible, copy, paste, and done. And it helps expand your world and your reach so quickly. And the only downside of it is it can suck you in so much that you just lose track of time for the other things that you're supposed to do that might not be as fun.
Leslie, how do you counsel your clients on social media today?
Yes, we need to practice what we preach, as I'm thinking. We're learning as we're trying to instruct them. I mean, it has been transformative. I mean, if there's any one thing, one of the questions I think you were in our advanced sheet was, what are some things that have really changed behaviors? It's social media, it's technology. It's opened up the world to our entrepreneurs. By the same token, they can't sell their services to the world. It brings on other challenges. So yes, it's learning ourselves and teaching them to be very strategic. There's a lot of low-cost ways that they can advance their business, but they need to understand there's still the fundamentals. Who is your customer? How do they find out about you? How do they get the product? So there's still the fundamentals of business and marketing. It's just the means by which it's conveyed is very different. And there's many channels. So it's understanding what the channels are, who they're reaching, and what's the best for you, or what's the best two channels for you. I mean, when I started, it was you flyered, people flyered, and they went on radio shows. They still go on radio. Radio is actually a pretty powerful tool. with the flyering and posters and things like that. Now it's social media posts. So it's still the same thing, but it's a much busier world. So while you're making yourself available to a much larger audience, you do have to be very, very strategic, because it's not the world that's going to buy your product. It's really your particular neighborhood or your particular community that's going to buy your product or service. And you need to understand that, and you need to learn about what is available. The good news is there's a lot available, and it's very low cost.
Mm-hmm. Gary Vaynerchuk is one of the best people to follow about social media and what's new and how to just observe his behavior will give you a lot of ideas. So Gary Vaynerchuk is Gary V, V-E-E, on all his social media handles. And he has a lot of great content, but if you observe his behaviors, you're going to learn a lot quickly.
Okay, well, at this time, we would like to open up to the floor if there's anyone that would like to ask the ladies a question that we may not have already touched upon. If you could just raise your hand, we'll come to you. Anyone?
It's an easy one to remember.
Hi, my name is Emily Amrad. I work in alumni relations for Aiken Gump, which is an international law firm. My question to you is, how do you deal with the fact that, and then this might be a stereotype, this might be true fact, but I feel like a lot of times as women age in business, there comes this thing about appearance and attractiveness, and how in certain industries only attractive women will stay on throughout, and in terms of, and especially on who companies choose to promote. And I guess my question is, what are your opinions on that? Do you think that's actually grounded in truth, or is that a fallacy? I would just be curious to hear your thoughts about that.
Well, I, for one, would like to say it's the energy that you arrive with that people feel the most, right? So we all have been around people who aren't necessarily the best-looking person in the room, but their energy just owns the room. And that's who you want to become, that person that just has effervescent energy, and you're contagious, and you're exciting to be around. And again, you don't have to be loud and as much energy as I have to do that. You could just be kind and thoughtful and asking people questions. There's a book that changed my life in my 20s, How to Influence Friends, and it's one of the most nostalgic books, and it basically teaches you how to be more thoughtful and kind. And I think when people come in with belief systems like that, like belief systems derive our behaviors, which derives our energy, which derives our outcomes. And that's human behavior. It's a pattern. And so if we actually challenge ourselves to become the best versions of ourselves every day, we don't need to worry about what age we are. I actually believe that happiness is anti-aging, so become as happy as possible, and you'll just age backwards, right? And I have so much more confidence at 44 than I ever did at 24. And I believe with age also comes a lot of wisdom and a lot of insight that somebody younger doesn't have. So I don't carry the belief system that my age is a hindrance. I actually carry the belief system that my age is making me wiser and more able to navigate situations way more effectively. And I just work on my happiness and my energy.
I just think knowledge is power, and I think there'll come a time where we don't focus so much on the looks and what is more important. It's unfortunate to hear that. I know it probably does happen. I haven't experienced it. But as I said, I think times are changing, and energy and happiness is definitely key.
I think demographics are starting to defy that. I'm part of the baby boomer generation, and there's still a lot of us around, so we're embracing, well, not everybody, but I think as a demographic group, we're embracing that a lot more. I think age and wisdom are huge assets. I mean, when you think about when you do walk in a room, who are you attracted to? It's usually that person with that energy. It's not necessarily, you may be attracted to somebody to look at them, but it's the person with the energy that you're drawn to. So you need to take that to heart. And yeah, there's a lot of us out there that are aging. I have parents that are in their late 80s, early 90s, and I love being around their group. I mean, they have so much knowledge to bring, and it's really about that person. So I think it's hard in your 20s because you're still trying to find yourself. And for women in particular, looks are often seen as such an important asset. But by the time you get into your 30s and 40s, it's what I know. And I have a lot to bring to the table. So I think part of that is natural. But I also think we're seeing a shift because there's a power in numbers.
Were there?
Hi, my name is Beth Brodowski. I run a marketing firm called Iris Creative, and we focus on participation. All of you have had success in your careers and then have hit points where you needed to make a shift. How did you come to recognize when it was time to do something different and become willing to let go, especially in a world of social media where there is brand and personal brand that's built up that says this is who you are? And I find sometimes there's a lot of entrepreneurs that are really naturally risk takers, and then there's some of us that get identities attached to what we've created. So how have you evolved along that continuum as you've made one or many shifts?
I think from an athlete's perspective, a lot of us struggle with that transition because we have been identified as athletes for our whole entire lives. And then, once you're done, it's like, who am I? Am I the athlete or am I someone else? So you have to continue to brand yourself. I mean, that's really what it comes down to. And a lot of us depend on our agents, but we will find very quickly the minute you're done playing, your agents are no longer around. It's a sad truth. None of us want to believe it. We all think that they'll be there, but there's something to be said about they want to be investing in the current players that are making money, not the has-beens. So you have to continue to go out there, not a has-been, but you gotta figure out on your own. You can't depend on anybody else. And so that actually is another area that we have at our company is continuing to brand yourself. You can't depend on anybody else. So continuing to form yourself, figure out what you're passionate about, your next passion. And that's another hard thing with athletes is probably your next job is never going to be something that you love as much as playing. That's just the sad truth. But you have to find out what that next passionate thing is that you want to invest your time and your efforts and all the success that you had on the playing field, how you can be successful at this next venture.
So I'll answer that. That's a timely question. It's a work in progress. So I'm facing that myself in terms of I've been doing this for over 20 years, coming up on 30 years. What is the next phase? I don't see myself as coming away from doing the type of work I do in terms of this community work, but maybe in a different role. I think it's important when you're running an organization or a company, there's that delicate dynamic between, especially if it's a small organization, because I'm the head of the organization, the brand and myself are very much tied to each other, but I'm also very cognizant that the organization will live on and it can't be too tied to me. So I want to be very intentional about how we transition over. But that's a difficult one, and I've heard that question from others, or I've heard it discussed in terms of transitioning to a new venture or to a new phase, and especially if you've built a company, how do you move beyond that? I think you have to be true to yourself, and I think you have to look at grooming perhaps some successors or leaving an organization or a company in such a way. We have to make a decision. Do you want to just fold the company? Do you want to sell the company? Do you want to, there's some of those decisions, but I think it's something you need to think about and be very intentional if you want to both come out whole at the end of the process.
I mentioned earlier that everything stems from belief systems, and I always question, who created some of these crazy beliefs that we operate in fear from? And when I graduated college, my degree is in education and psychology, so I naturally psychoanalyzed pretty much everything. And truth be told. And so when I graduated college, everyone wanted me to be just one thing. And I actually had a client who was a psychologist who said, Jen, you're like all over the place with all these ideas. Like, you're so ADD. Do you need like Adderall or something? And I'm like, no, I kind of like all my ideas, like being kind of all over the place. And she kept saying, you need to just focus on one thing and just fit in this one box. And I'm like, I don't want to fit in one box. Like, I want to be in multiple boxes. And it was just my personality. And I always bucked everybody else trying to put me in one box or trying to put one label on me. And I feel, to answer your question, the world is finally waking up that we are multi-dimensional, multi-talented people who evolve. And who you were at 20 is not who you are at 40 and who you are at 60. And if you're doing the same thing without your own personal evolution, you're probably going to become really stagnant. And if you're doing it because of what everybody else believes that you're supposed to do, then you're ruining your own potential. And so to maximize your potential, we always have to be evolving and growing and transforming. Even if we stay in the same industry, we can evolve and transform in that space. But allowing someone else's limited beliefs that you, just because you did something your whole life, you can't go do something else, is it's insanity to me, because we are multi-talented, multi-dimensional people. And I basically have built my entire career on building multiple companies in multiple industries. And when someone says I can't, it inspires me to do it more and buck the belief systems.
Hi, ladies. Kevin Ryan, Citrin Cooperman.
Hi, Kevin.
This has been such a positive. You're all very successful, but we've all encountered that in Jen, in your company, that idea that doesn't work. Heather, maybe it's a prospect that really isn't going to be a good fit. And Leslie, it's that person seeking a loan, but you have to say no. When do you get to that point when you know, hey, this is just a waste of my time, I'm too busy, I want to focus on something else? And how do you break it to that person that it's not going to work? Or Jen, you just move on from that idea. When do you say it's just not going to happen?
When I'm not passionate about it anymore, and when I feel like I'm banging into one wall after the next. And I don't ever say it's not going to work forever. I sometimes just say I maybe have to shelve this for now. I launched a company back in 2008 called Leader Girls that teaches young girls empowerment through play. And at that time period, when I pitched it to the head of Mattel, the CMO of Mattel literally said, now, all I said was it was Leader Girls and it teaches young girls empowerment through play. And he said, honey, girls want to play with pretty dolls. And I said, all right, well, we're obviously not seeing eye to eye on this brand, because I never said that they were not pretty or pretty. I just said that they were leaders. And that time period quickly changed to 7 years later. On the front cover of Wall Street Journal was entrepreneur dolls became the it thing. So I was just a little bit ahead of the time. I actually wound up launching the company despite that. But I didn't ride the wave until 7 years later. So sometimes visionaries are just a little bit ahead of the curve. So what I've learned as I mature as an entrepreneur is to really understand trends. And you want to be beginning the process in the beginning of a trend. But sometimes if you're way ahead of the trend and the rest of the world, like meaning the consumers, aren't there with you, you might want to put the brakes on a little bit. So for me, I not necessarily just get rid of it. I might say I might need to shelve it for now. And if I'm no longer passionate about it, I'm not going to do it because I'm not going to do it well. And I know that about myself.
We're a relatively new company, so I think one of the things that Angela and I pride ourselves on is just kind of being that support system and being there in place for females, just to be their team and to help them along in the process. And so we have companies that we have vetted, and so we offer those options through an interview process. And if it just gets to the point that we've exhausted all of our options, and it just seems that we can't help them, then obviously we let them know that we'll still be there as our support group, but maybe that we're just not the right fit, unfortunately. And then we might go back to the drawing board too and figure out, since we didn't have something to offer them, maybe this is something that we do need to go out and find a new partner and have that option, because we always just want to be able to expand and be able to help out as many women as possible. We started as athletes, then we became businesswomen, entrepreneurs, moms that were in the workforce that had children and now are trying to get back in. So we're always just trying to listen to our clients and make sure that we have something to offer them.
Yeah, so I'm going to take this and answer this two ways. One, from the perspective of what we do with our entrepreneur clients. For the loans, we've got pretty clear criteria. So if they don't meet certain, we're far more flexible than banks, but there are other areas where they're just not ready yet. And that's the way we approach it. It's no, not now. It's not no, not never. In terms of a client that's always coming and wants one-on-one that will quickly suck our time resources, it's really trying to shift. We work with our trainers and our consultants to shift the conversation back to them or shift what they need to do. They need to go and do their homework rather than constantly trying to, because we can't do it for them. We can guide them. So we try and set some parameters there. But it's hard. But we don't say no, not never. We just say no, not now. Or why don't you go do that? Come back to us when you have this information. So it's a gentler approach. The people that don't want to invest the time in doing something for their business, then we're not for them, because they're not willing to invest their time into their business. And then the other perspective is working with partner organizations. We can't do the work that we do without working with other partner organizations, be it one of the city agencies, other nonprofit organizations that bring complementary services, even organizations that do similar work that us. Sometimes we share the risk, or they're doing a workshop that I think one of our clients can benefit from, so the library is a good example. There's sometimes that partnerships that they look good on paper, and then when you start the conversations, we're just not there yet. We're not aligned. So sometimes it's like it sounds interesting, but if this isn't going to align, or there's a leadership change, that's often how things change, then we have to step away from it, or they step away from it. It's not that we can't revisit that relationship when things change, and then we try and keep the doors open. But yes, that's difficult, because you want to bring as many resources, and we're resource constrained as well. We rely on grants and donations to support our work. So we have limitations, and we all try and leverage what we can. But sometimes it just doesn't work. So we have to move on and say, maybe next time, or if we can work on a joint proposal together, we can make something work.
Thank you. We're going to take our final question for today as we're coming to the end of our program.
Hi, I'm Stephanie Walters. I'm the general counsel of a small financial services firm, and I had a question, Jen, as a follow-up to something that you mentioned about paying for mentoring. And I was wondering if you could just explain that a little bit. I wasn't sure if you meant through professional coaching, and if so, if that's something that you've used regularly throughout your career, if it's something that you've relied on at specific intervals, or if you could just explain a little bit.
Yeah, so there's, as we all talked about, there's different forms of, there's friendship mentorship, there's coaching, which, a lot of people invest a ton of money in getting their kids extra coaching to be better at a sport, but they won't do it in themselves. And that's where I'm talking about. When you want to get to the next level quickly, I don't believe in wasting time. So when I first launched the Butler Bag Company, I wanted to master, I mentioned earlier, I wanted to master PR. I wanted to know everything about it. So I hired a coach. And I hired this coach who was the top of the game, $5,000 an hour. An hour, I swear to God, this was back in 2005. But I wanted to learn everything. Trust me, I hung on to every minute. I valued every minute of that hour very differently than I would if I was spending $20 for that. But because I invested in that, and I invested in who was at the top of the game, I learned so much in that 1 hour that it skyrocketed my career, literally skyrocketed my career. And that man will still stand beside me to this day. If I needed anything, he's got my back and will teach me something, or he will refer me to something. So when I say that there's an energy exchange, I invested in that. So I invested in myself and my presence and my commitment to a whole different level. Again, if I didn't pay for that or I only paid $100 for it, I wouldn't have soaked up literally every second of every minute of every hour of that hour the way that I did. And so there's a commitment to it, there's an energy exchange to it, and then there's also the mentor that sees you commit into yourself, invest in yourself, will stand with you for the rest of time as you continue to grow. But when I feel that, Leslie mentioned earlier, they can't work with people who aren't willing to invest in themselves. And as you see people that are higher echelon in business success, they're not going to waste their time on people that want everyone else to do the work for them or just want advice and they may or may not take it. It's like that girlfriend that keeps calling you, complaining about the same story over and over again, and eventually you're like, stop calling. I've already given you the advice like 50 times. So it's that same feeling. So if you want to go from here to here quickly, which I always want to go from here to here quickly, then I invest in the person that's going to take me from there to there quickly. But I'm also investing in myself. They can't do the work for me. I just have to be a really good student and absorb everything that I possibly can. But there is an energy exchange in investing in something versus expecting it just for free. And I found that those are my biggest leaps when I do that.
So I'd like to take a moment and thank our panel. Thank you so much for sharing your experience. And your energy and passion is clear. So I really greatly appreciate your spending time with us this morning. And thank you all of you for attending. I'm sorry to say we're at the end of our program, but we appreciate your coming and hope you'll join us again.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks,
Have a great
everyone.
day.